Anthony Arkwright was someone who knew nothing but rejection from an early age, as his mother abandoned him and his 5 siblings. He spent a lot of time in children's homes, drifting into criminality after being expelled from school. By the age of 21, he was fired from his job for poor attendance and a bad attitude. This firing was a catalyst for a 56-hour murder spree that left 4 people dead. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Anthony Arkwright was born in 1967 in Wath-upon-Dearne, South Yorkshire. He was the middle child of 5 siblings, although his mother abandoned the family while he was young. This heavily affected him as he bounced between several children's homes. He dropped out of school due to poor grades and dove into petty crime, even serving time in a youth detention center. During his stints in custody, he spent several hours in the prison libraries, reading as much as he could about serial killers. Arkwright idolized Peter Sutcliffe and Jack the Ripper, and used to boast to whoever would listen that one day he would emulate their crimes, and one day become as infamous as them. When he was released from his latest jail stint, Arkwright lived in a flat on Denham Road in the town of Wath-upon-Dearne, South Yorkshire, where he had been born and raised. Arkwright fancied himself as a bit of a survival fanatic, even going as far as building a series of dens around the area. He would sit in these dens for hours, armed with a hunting knife, fantasizing about people he wanted to hurt and kill. By the age of 21, he was working at a scrapyard in Mexborough. On August 26, 1988, he was sacked from his job for poor attendance and a poor attitude. Afterwards, Arkwright took his severance pay and went on a drinking spree that afternoon in a nearby pub. By 4:15 p.m., he was very drunk, and his fantasies of killing were about to make the leap into reality. One of the people that Arkwright had fantasized about killing the most was his grandfather, 68-year-old Stasis Pudoikis, who Arkwright believed was actually his father. Due to several false rumors spread during his upbringing, Anthony thought that he was the product of an incestuous relationship between his grandfather and his mother. That afternoon, Anthony headed to his grandfather's house in Ruskin Drive, Mexborough, but no one was home. He then headed to his grandfather's allotment a mile away and found him there tending to his vegetable patch. As he turned to greet his grandson, Stasis was stabbed in the neck with so much force that his spinal cord was severed, instantly paralyzing him. Anthony then dragged his grandfather's body inside the small shed and buried a large axe into his chest. He then smashed his skull into pieces with a 14-pound lump hammer. He then locked the body inside the shed and went back to his grandfather's house and stole 3,000 pounds. Finding his grandfather's housekeeper at the house, 72-year-old Elsa Conrodite, Arkwright smashed her skull with an axe and left her dead in the kitchen. He spent the evening drinking in several pubs in the area, deliberately drawing attention to himself by dropping hints about his crimes, attempting to pick fights with several people. People would later say that they remembered the wild-eyed weirdo, demonstrating this craving for recognition and attention. "It's been murder on the allotment today," Anthony said to a barman that evening. But by 3 a.m. on the morning of Saturday, August 27th, Arkwright was back at his house, ready to kill again. Anthony had a reputation around the neighborhood as a violent bully, and his new target was his neighbor, 45-year-old ex-teacher Raymond Ford. Ford was a severely depressed and ill heavy drinker who lived in near squalor, rarely venturing out of the house except to buy more booze. Arkwright would smash his windows for fun and stuff dog feces into his mailbox. Just a few days earlier, he had broken into Raymond's home and stolen a valuable antique clock and a microwave oven. Raymond had reported this to the police and had named Arkwright as a likely culprit. In Arkwright's eyes, this signed Mr. Ford's death warrant. After Arkwright returned home at 3 a.m., he stripped naked and put on a Prince of Darkness devil mask. He then entered Raymond's home through a broken window, one that he himself had thrown a trash can through days earlier. Finding Mr. Ford slumped in his wheelchair in a drunken stupor, Arkwright then unleashed his sadistic nature on the defenseless man. Anthony stabbed Raymond more than 250 times in every part of his body. Some accounts put the figure as close to 500 times. He used so much force that one of the knives broke and was left in the wound. Arkwright then fetched another knife and continued stabbing. I need you to get into perspective. 250 stab wounds. Think about how long you're doing that for. Like, he's been dead and you're like, what? That's just that's psychotic. That's literally psychotic. Ford was then gutted and disemboweled, as his entrails and organs were draped and scattered around his bungalow. After spending an hour mutilating Ford's body, Arkwright went home and showered the blood off himself, then went to bed. Wow, you just stabbed a guy 500 times and you just going to bed taking a shower. Wow. By 8 a.m. that Saturday morning, police knocked on his door and arrested him on suspicion of burglary earlier in the week at Mr. Ford's house. He was detained for a few hours before being released on bail to attend court next week. When he was released, Arkwright spent the Saturday evening drinking around several pubs, again in Mexborough. In the early hours of Sunday, August 28, 1988, he found himself back at home and almost in a carbon copy of what had transpired just 24 hours earlier. Arkwright again targeted another one of his neighbors to kill. 25-year-old Marcus Law lived across from Arkwright in a specially adapted bungalow that catered to his wheelchair, as he was paralyzed from a motorcycle accident some years ago. Arkwright broke into Marcus's home and attacked him, stabbing him over 70 times. When an attempt to disembowel Marcus failed, Arkwright rammed one of Marcus's crutches into a large wound in his stomach. Arkwright gouged out Marcus's eyes and had placed unlit cigarettes in the empty sockets, also in his ears, nose, and his mouth. The following morning, Arkwright had a chance meeting with Marcus's mother and smirked as he told her, "Sorry about poor old Marcus. He's killed himself." Mrs. Law hurried around to her son's bungalow where she made the horrific discovery. Man, that's just cold. That's cold. Arkwright was arrested a few hours earlier on suspicion of the murder of Marcus Law, and the interview that followed was extremely bizarre. Arkwright had a pack of playing cards with him and shuffled through them as detectives attempted to question him about Marcus's killing. Stopping when he got to the Four of Hearts card, Arkwright said, "I can read the future from these cards. This is the Master card. It means you have 4 bodies and a madman on the loose. I can see Marcus Law, but the others are undescribable. They are just too horrible to describe. Were there 4 murders? Police didn't know because he wouldn't say anything more than cryptic ramblings. He reveled in being the center of attention but wouldn't expand on anything more, just that he denied killing Marcus." Police had little evidence against Arkwright, but with him as their prime suspect in mind, they held him in custody whilst they set about making inquiries in the Denham Road area. Upon learning that Arkwright was due to appear in court on the burglary charge, they went to speak to Raymond Ford, and Police Constable David Winter discovered a scene he would never forget. Seeing the broken window, PC Winter made his way into Ford's flat. On the floor of the corridor were several items, bits and pieces, including a Prince of Darkness devil mask. The television was on, and the central heating, and it was then that PC Winter noticed deep bloodstaining to the entirety of the flat. When the unmistakable stench of decomposition led PC Winter to the bedroom, he discovered the remains of Raymond Ford. All the bits and pieces in the hallway, that were his internal organs. He removed practically every internal organ from his body, David Winter would say later. Police had found the second body and knew that Arkwright was telling the truth. The police then tried to trace friends and acquaintances of Arkwright in an attempt to try to identify anyone missing. 6 days after they had both been murdered, the bodies of Stasis and Elsa were discovered. Arkwright soon confessed to the murders of his grandfather, Raymond Ford, and Marcus Law. He stopped short of actually confessing to the murder of Elsa, but went as far as to say he stood over her body with the axe in his hand. I mean, that sounds like a confession to me. He was charged and was incarcerated at Hall Prison whilst awaiting trial. Not being content with being out of the limelight, Arkwright invented a 5th victim, which led police on a wild goose chase searching a nearby lake and drainage ditch. It was simply to gain attention, and this continued while he was awaiting trial. Arkwright was angered at what he deemed was lack of respect and recognition, and regularly staged dirty protests, smearing his cell walls with his feces. When this failed again to gain the attention he craved, Arkwright then changed tactics and managed to convince prison doctors that he was insane. Transferred to Rampton Secure Hospital in Merseyside, detailed examinations found this to be a ruse, and that he was fit to plead. In July 1989, Anthony Arkwright came to trial for the murders he had committed. After an adjournment requested by his legal representation, Arkwright changed his not guilty plea to that of guilty of the murders of his grandfather, Raymond Ford, and Marcus Law. He maintained a plea of not guilty for the murder of Elsa Conradite and that charge was ordered by the presiding judge to be left on file. Anthony Arkwright was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he serve at least 25 years. In 1990, the then Home Secretary Jack Straw declared this term as too lenient and increased the term to a whole life tariff. Thank you. Because there's no way you're going to kill 4 people and get out on parole. There's no way. Anthony did technically claim a 5th victim, however. 14 years after his son's horrific murder, Marcus Law's father, Tony, committed suicide by gassing himself inside of his car. He never got over his son's horrific death. Wow. Like, this, I still don't understand how much rage you have to have in order to stab somebody 250 times and then disembowel them. And I don't know. Wow. I think he just wanted to like shock everybody. That's what it was. I don't know, because that is 250 times. Like, how do you, like, what? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. This whole, like, he's definitely it's just sick. I don't even know what it is. But like your own grandfather too. That's the wild part. And I don't know. I don't know. Thank you for watching this. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Thank you for all the support you guys have been giving me. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.